would happen if the airport had a mass casualty incident? What agencies would respond to that, and how would they handle it? With me today, Chief Peter Burke from the Hyannis Fire Department and Barnstable Municipal Airport Manager Katie Service. We're going to find out. There's a drill happening.
There is.
That's right.
September 5th, 5 o'clock at the airport and Lewis Bay. Both entities will be testing their capabilities to respond to a mass disaster at either location, either in Lewis Bay or the airport. So let's start with the airport, Katie. Tell us why this drill is happening.
Well, I'll give you the backstory. The reason why we do the drill is because we need to maintain or adhere to our federal regulations as a certified airport. So under the Federal Aviation Administration, we are required to conduct numerous types of drills to make sure that our first responders on the airport are capable, they're ready to respond to an incident should it occur on the airport, and to just test our communications, test our capabilities, and overall just test how we, every situation and how we can respond to that situation. Training, training, training.
Training, training, training. And talking about this, it's not just your two entities that are involved in this. There's several others as well, correct?
Correct. Right.
Okay,
So the airport, just a little bit of background, the airport are the first responders to anything that occurs on the airport facility. Hyannis Fire is always right there to work with us as soon as that alarm goes off. So our folks get into their trucks. We have 3 trucks at the airport that are fire equipped to be able to handle that. They get into the vehicles, they go out to the scene, and Hyannis Fire is at the gate right away. As soon as Hyannis Fire comes on board, they work with the airport staff to assess the scene, to determine what the needs are, and we work as a team. So beyond just the airport folks in the Hyannis Fire, we also work with Barnstable Police, we work with the State Police, we work with the Red Cross. So we have a lot of, and even other fire departments locally in our areas that we call upon to assist us if there is an incident that occurs at the airport. They will be players as part of this drill.
okay. So this drill is really important for Hyannis Fire Department as well as the broader town fire departments that are out there. And you're adding a component of water this year.
Sure. So a lot of the air traffic goes over Nantucket Sound, obviously, and we know that's a challenge. Obviously, should an aircraft go down there. So one aspect of the exercise this year will be a simulated aircraft down in Lewis Bay.
So when you talk about an aircraft down in the bay, there's a whole lot that happens there. You have what, maybe 2, 3 boats? So
Sure.
the coordinated marine effort, how does that happen?
Sure. So we actually have a fairly robust maritime response program that's run out of county control in conjunction with the Coast Guard. So by federal statute, the Coast Guard is the incident commander. So we're close with them to ensure there's enough assets, which are essentially boats, that be deployed out to Lewis Bay to retrieve any victims and make that situation safe.
Okay. And the third component of this that folks probably aren't really considering is the emergency, what happens to the victims. So there's people that are going to play the victims. You have volunteers that are playing victims?
Yes, so we have volunteers, and we use the volunteers so that the fire department, so the airport and the fire department that's responding, and EMS that's responding, we try to make it as real world scenario as possible. So we do use volunteers as victims so that we can identify victims that need to go to the hospital. Cape Cod Hospital is also a player in this event. So they're testing their own capabilities to deal with a large disaster of this kind, and how they will have patients and incoming patients, and how they will deal with an influx of over 40 people coming to the hospital, and how their staff will handle a crisis like that.
Right. And the airport's grown, obviously, in aircraft. So, you know, JetBlue is coming in now. Retrix has got some of the larger planes. So this is really a test of a lot of capabilities for some of these larger planes that carry more passengers.
Correct. So the Federal Aviation Administration requires that we put a drill like this and test ourselves for the inevitability of the largest aircraft. So at this point in time, that is the, for instance, the JetBlue aircraft that comes in. That's our largest aircraft. But what a lot of our residents in CUNY are not aware of is that we do have a lot of corporate aircraft that are just as big as the JetBlue aircraft coming in, or an aircraft of 100 passenger seat, you know, anywhere between 50 and 100 passengers. So not only do we deal with those commercial service aircraft that we're preparing for, we're also making sure that we can respond to any incident, whether it be a 2-passenger, 4-passenger, 50-passenger aircraft. Whatever the size aircraft, it is still a response to be able to identify how we're going to deal with that situation. If there's a fire, if there's passengers that are stuck in the aircraft, how are we going to extricate those passengers? So it just gives us the opportunity to look at the gamut of aircraft that are coming onto the airfield and how we deal with each one differently.
Okay. An enormous amount of planning, Chief. You had some folks that were part of that team to plan. Tell us about it.
We did, yeah. We're really fortunate. We have Captain Mark Story and firefighter Pete Nagorka, both who have a background in aircraft firefighting, took the lead as what's called the exercise directors. So this is being run according to the Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program protocols. So that provides a framework for Katie and her staff and our Hyannis Fire Department staff to really develop a program that's, or an exercise rather, that is safe and driven by objectives, and then those objectives are evaluated. So one of the important things for us is that these are transferable skills. So while we're working with the airport, from our perspective, a mass casualty incident, you know, a number of patients that need to get treated and transported, that could be from a bus accident, it could be from a hazardous material spill, it could be from a ferry collision. In this instance, it's an airport. So we get a lot of value from this training exercise. So an enormous amount of work went into it to make sure that all the moving parts are together and safe. There will be some simulated fires on the airfield, so there's a lot going on, but we're really fortunate to have a great team working on that. And earlier this week we did a tabletop, walking through the scenario and the evolution to ensure that there aren't any kind of unforeseen circumstances. So we're really excited, I think, and have a great plan.
Right. And the main thing, and I agree with Chief Burke, because the main thing is to get our groups together so that if something does happen, I know the faces of the emergency response team that I can go to and I can ask for help. And that's the key thing, is to have these meetings and to have that opportunity to work with the people that you're going to see out there in the field if this ever occurs in this area. So to have those connections, to meet with those people on a regular basis is key to being able to serve the community better and be able to respond to an incident should it happen.
Right. And this is, what, 6 months planning?
We started planning in March. There's a lot of planning, background planning to make sure that, for instance, what radio communications are we going to use? What frequencies are we going to use? What will be the protocol if there were a real-world incident? What's the protocol for bringing the victims or the volunteers to the hospital? So all of these moving parts had to be fleshed out. You know, our staff has a checklist. What do we need on the airport to be able to do our functions for the disaster zone? I'm sure the chief and his folks have a checklist for Lewis Bay.
Right.
So it's the planning for it is quite large, and I have to say, thank you to the Hyannis Fire Department for their assistance, because we just all worked very well together in making this come together.
That makes me as a resident feel really, really good. And let's talk about what residents can do to help this be successful. Folks, the Rotary literally is going to be jammed. So September 5th, 5 o'clock this exercise starts. It's right at rush hour. How can residents, number one, stay aware of what's going on in the area, and two, help stay out of the area?
You know, I think that's, unfortunately, there isn't really an opportunity for the citizens to view this. It is off on the airfield and out fairly far off in Lewis Bay. And so the best thing they could probably do is avoid the area, understand we're there and train. There'll be pictures available. Certainly you guys will be there as well. So there'll be the opportunity for media releases for them to see what happens there, but because of the nature of the airport and where we're operating, there just isn't a great place for them to be. So the best thing they could do is avoid that area during the time frame of 5 to 10 o'clock or so.
Okay. And the other thing I think that we kind of want to make sure is that this is an exercise. There's going to be sirens. It's going to look scary, right?
Right. So I think what the residents have to be aware of is that they're going to see a number of fire apparatus, a number of EMS vehicles, police vehicles that are responding to the mock incident. So they're going to see some activity, some people that, you know, might not know what's going on. Please spread the word, because although, like the chief said, the areas that we're doing the drill at, that we're conducting the drill, are kind of far off from the roadways, they're still going to see those lights and hear those sirens. So just know it is a drill. We are practicing our response to an incident should it ever occur in this area.
Okay. And how about on the water? Still got boats out there. I know it's after Labor Day, but those pleasure boats and seekers, stay away, right?
Yeah, we'll have security vessels out there with a cordon, because we'll have members of our regional dive team simulating victims. So we'll have people in the water, and the rescue boats will be searching for them and then removing them from the water. So there'll be security vessels keeping the area clean. We're going to be outside the ferry channels. We won't be anywhere near where there should be any other boating activity. So yeah, certainly we just ask recreational boaters to steer clear of the area. And I should also mention as well, as much as the airport and Hyannis Fire are working really closely with Barnstable PD and other agencies, we do have the other 4 fire districts participating, as well as Yarmouth Fire, and then a variety of other fire departments who are sending specific assets or ambulances and engines. So this is, I believe last night we figured about 15 or so fire companies operating. So it is sizable. So Katie's absolutely right. There's going to be a lot of activity there. So we're certainly thankful to all those other agencies for their assistance as well.
Right.
And I'm glad that Chief Burke just mentioned that, because one of the things I failed to mention was Red Cross. Red Cross are practicing their family support center. So they are going to evaluate how their people and their staff respond to an incident should it occur. So they're actually testing their own people on how they're going to handle a situation that's a mass casualty, and how they will deal with the influx of family, friends, and people that are just interested in learning more about the incident.
Right.
So they're going to be practicing that. Our airlines are going to be working with them and arriving at their location, so that the airlines themselves can evaluate their people on how they would respond to a situation like this. Because if you think about it, if something were to occur like this, you have people coming to the airport, they're trying to learn information, their loved ones may have been on an aircraft. So you have an influx of people. How do you deal with that? Well, the Red Cross is there to help us deal with that, and the airlines have their own programs, so they're going to test that.
Okay, so the tenants of the airport are actually going to be testing their capabilities
Yes,
as
they
well.
are.
Amazing. Just, kudos to the team out there. I hope it's successful and that you get the training that you need, that our residents are so grateful for.
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you very much.